This is lesson 85, and I have a fun title tonight. Uh, sometimes I just meditate on things, and I was just meditating on how we need to redeem the letter F. Because it seems like it gets used only one way. And it's got, yeah, yes, that letter has a bad rap, Lori. You're absolutely right. And so, I was just talking to the Lord about it, and it's just fun how he talks to me. So there's one F word, but anyway, he says that's okay. You're going to redeem the letter F tonight. He says I'm going to give you a 5-word title, and they all start with F. 5 because 5 is the number of grace, and you need a whole lot of grace to get over the fact that people always use this letter that way. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. So tonight's message title is Functional Footwear for Faithful Following. Functional footwear for faithful following. Tonight we're talking about Ephesians 6:15, which is, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. So the Lord wants to talk to us tonight about functional footwear that are going to help us to faithfully follow. And so tonight we're going to, in particular, I think, we'll see, going to look at the words that are in here and what those words mean from the Greek. Because we don't really use the word shod, do we? That's kind of an, unusual word. I mean, I don't tell you, hey, we're going to go hike in the mountains. I think you should shod your hiking boots. Right? I mean, that'd be just kind of weird, wouldn't it? Or we're going to go to the beach. It's time for you to shod your flip-flops. Said no one ever. So what does shod mean? Because it must mean something more, or there must be some depth to this word over put on. Because, why didn't he just say, hey, put on shoes of peace, right? He didn't say that. And Paul is a master for using words very specifically. So looking into what these words mean is always important. And so this word shod is a word, it's from 2 words that are put together, hupodeo. And so hupo is H-U-P-O, and then deo, D-E-O. And it means to bind under or to bind on. So you might be saying, go tie your shoes. Somebody walking along, oh, your shoelace is untied, you better tie your shoes. But this is more depth than that. This is bind your shoes. Is this like double knot them? So getting a picture of what it is that he would be thinking, remember, we're looking at this Roman soldier and what his stuff looked like. So let's go to that picture of the Roman soldier again that we put up there over and over. And if you look at his feet, this is probably not the best rendition of it, because it wouldn't have open toes. It really isn't flip-flops. That looks like flip-flops with really long ties or something. But you see the part that's up the leg? Well, that part that's up the leg would actually go all the way up to about here. So it would be up underneath where that breastplate would be down over. Oh, so those legs would be completely covered. They would be completely covered with probably brass. The part from here down to the foot, it would go from here down to the top of the foot. This part was called the greaves, Greaves, the greaves. And they were each soldier would have those made specifically for them. It was completely around their legs, these brass, like a brass casing. If you think about how a knight in shining armor looked, you know how they had these metal pants they stepped in, and that was their whole bottom armor. Well, these would be this down this leg, and it would completely protect the leg. And we're going to talk about what it would protect it from and what that parallels in our lives as well. And then the shoe part, the foot part, was in two pieces, a top part and a bottom part, which was also probably brass. And it would be laced together on the sides with really strong leather strapping. So when you shod your feet, you would be binding on and binding under these parts of metal that would completely protect the parts of you that did the walking. So legs, thighs, shins, and feet were completely covered. So that picture doesn't really do it justice, because it kind of looks like wimpy sandals with high laces. Far more than that. Much of the terrain that soldiers would march across would be rocky. It could be through thorns and thistles, rocky, thorns and thistles, or really hardened paths. Does that sound like anything we've heard about before? How long have you been coming to church here? So the footwear, the things that they would wear, would give them the ability to tolerate all of the harsh environment that was not good soil to walk on. There's your fourth one. And they were completely protected, but they also, the bottom part of that would have, like, in comparison, they were hobnails that were nailed into them, so they were like cleats. So they were very stable on any terrain. And it also would have a spike out the front that would be very useful if you got too close to them. So this piece, like the other ones we've looked at so far, could be both defensive and offensive. A defensive and an offensive weapon. Because on defense, nobody could kick you in the shins. They'd break their toe kicking you in the shins. I mean, even if they were kicking you in the shins with similar footwear, they're not going to, you're going to clang. That's about it. It's, not going to hurt each other. But if somebody had come up to you, one of their methods of taking out a soldier was to kick them in the shins and break their leg. And then, once they fell to the ground, then they would behead them. So, I mean, we're talking brutal combat. And then there was all the marching and all the, wherever you went was not always nice terrain, especially if you were chasing somebody up into the hills or whatever. You weren't on nice paths and having a nice stroll. You were really having to climb, and it was not a good situation. So understanding that this footwear was an essential part, like it's been interesting. Each part I've talked about has been like essential. Like it's not an option. This is why Paul repeatedly says, put on the full armor of God. Like which part so far we've learned about the belt of truth, We've learned about the breastplate of righteousness, and now we're learning about our feet with these incredible metal boots on. Now, which part of those would you want to leave out? Right? I mean, you've already discovered, oh, wait a minute, I can't leave any, I can't, if I don't have the belt, nothing else has a place to hook on. If I don't have truth, there's nothing to stand on, nothing to hook on. If I don't walk in his righteousness, oh dear, they're going to see me instead of the shininess of Christ. That's not a good thing. My righteousness is like a filthy rag. I don't need them to see that. I need them to see him. So I can't do without that. And that protects everything. All my vital organs is protected by that. Everything about you is protected by knowing you're in right standing. There's nothing the enemy can hit you with of any vital importance if you're covered in his righteousness. But boy, he sure can hit you in all sorts of ways if you're not. So you can't do without that. And now we're looking at this piece of armor that's foundational to your walk. Because, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I mean, it doesn't matter where my walk takes me. If I've got the correctly functional footwear, then I can faithfully follow anywhere. It doesn't matter. So what is this? Let's just think a little bit more about how being shod is important. There's a reason why Paul uses a footwear metaphor. There's a reason why. I mean, Paul makes this comment quite often about things where he says things like, and the God of peace will soon crush Satan underneath your feet. Well, I wonder if the God of peace can crush Satan under your feet if your feet don't have these boots on that are his peace. See, I wonder if that's not part of the partnership that we have with him. Because he is the armor. So if we have him on, then is that how the God of peace is on you so that he can crush Satan under your feet? See, we think he's going to come and whack him. You know, God's going to come and play whack-a-mole with the enemy. But you're going to play whack-a-mole with the enemy. And he's going to do it, but it's through your feet. So it's you walking in your path. It isn't about him coming and eradicating all the problems. It's about you walking in his peace so you walk through life, which is full of stuff. But if you have the right footwear on, you can walk through stuff and it's okay. I was out working on my garden when Mike first got here this week, and we were trying to bring everything in because the weather had changed, and it was rainy and my garden was mucky. And I had on these rubber boots that go up to about here. See, if you have the right footwear on, you can walk in any muck and it's okay. You know, they didn't usually deal with muck. They dealt with all this other stuff because it was desert. But think about how important it is. I mean, sometimes our lives feel pretty muddy. Well, if we're walking in him, then we can walk through stuff that we wouldn't be able to walk through otherwise. And I think many times if you watch your own life, if you watch the lives of others, you can see they left their shoes home. Or they've only put on flip-flops. Because they're, think about, flip-flops are lovely to wear unless there's 6 feet of snow out there. And you know what? We're in Wyoming, and it's amazing the number of times I still see it below zero and people in flip-flops. Whose brain are you using? No, I mean, like, that's not wisdom. But how many times in our own lives are we wearing spiritual flip-flops? We're wearing something that's comfortable to us, but then when things are uncomfortable, we find out that our footwear isn't helping us walk very well. Yow. Some things about footwear that were important in that time that we don't necessarily think about is footwear demonstrated, and this concept of binding them on implied a deliberate act. You didn't just slip into them. You know, these shoes that I'm wearing, you know, these are called Kizik's, and they're really neat because you don't have to untie them, and you don't mush the back down. They pop right back up again. How many of us have worn sneakers and been too lazy to tie them and untie them, and it doesn't take very long before the backs of them are crushed, and we're like, I guess I got to get a new pair, or maybe learn how to use the shoe wear correctly, or get some like these if you're lazy like I am. There's something about our footwear being correct for the circumstances and us using it correctly, or making sure that we've got it on. I always think of, when I talk about armor, I always think of Sherry, and she's in a room and we're talking about armor, and people are talking about make sure you put your armor on every morning. And Sherry sits there and goes, "Why are you taking it off? This isn't something you have to take off." Now, I can't imagine being a Roman soldier and deciding to sleep in that stuff, can you? But I'll bet if they're on patrol, if they're in the midst of warfare, I bet you they don't take it off to sleep. What do you think? They wear it anyway, right? So why do we think that being in God is about our comfort? Why do we think that He has to take care of us so we're comfortable, when this whole metaphor shows that we're part of an army and we're supposed to be ready, and we're supposed to be, are you supposed to be sleeping on the job? Now, does that mean you can't sleep? No, but I'm saying we're talking a spiritual thing here where we're always supposed to be clothed in Him. Yes, you can go to sleep at night, but don't go to sleep without your armor on. Even then, it isn't about, I don't have to think about God right now. Yes, you're supposed to bring God into everything. I don't care what the situation is. If He's not on the forefront of where you're at, you're going to probably get beat up on a bit by either the enemy or by your own soul. Most of the time, our beating does not really come from the enemy. It comes from us, and then we've opened the door enough so now the enemy can mess with us. We've given him permission. But as long as we don't give him permission, he doesn't have permission. As long as we don't say how big and bad he isn't very big and bad, because he's defeated. But if we give lip service to how big and bad he is, guess what he just got? Power. He got an invitation. That's right, Lori. He got power. He doesn't have power just on his own. Jesus, it says that he's defeated him. He's made an open show of him. He's publicly humiliated him. Do you know what we do when we're saying how big and bad he is? And how much, I'm struggling so bad, the enemy's kicking my tail. Really? The problem with that is, yeah, he probably is. You just gave him permission to. You just told him he was big enough to. You gave him back the rights to. Our job, we're supposed to be continuing to display his public humiliation, which Jesus gave him. Okay, it's not us. It's not like we're going to go, give the devil a knockout punch with our great prayer or whatever. But when we walk in the authority of God the way he says, that is over ourselves. And because we have authority to take care of ourselves, he gives us the power to trample feet on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means harm us. Why? Because if you've got the correct footwear on, nothing can get at your walkers. Nothing can get at your walk. Does this make sense? How these things go together? So, if you feel like you're getting kicked in the shins by the enemy, the first question to ask yourself is, am I wearing flip-flops today, or do I have my gospel shoes on? What am I missing? Because chances are you're not walking in the peace of God. So let me just break here for a minute in and say, there are two connotations to peace here. The first and foremost, you have to have this, or you can't, none of this applies. The first and foremost is peace with God. You have peace with God because of what Jesus did on the cross. He has made peace with God for you. That's what being reconciled to God is. We were at enmity with God. We were not at peace. We were at war with God. And it's interesting to me that still many times our soul realm, our thinking and our feeling is very much still at war. However, God's not at war with us. And because of salvation, if you're born again, you have peace with God, even if you still feel like you're in a war. So the problem here, once again, is if you haven't grasped and put on your breastplate, and you don't understand that you are the righteousness of God in Jesus Christ, the fact that you are that, he was made sin for you, that you might be made the righteousness of God in Jesus Christ. That is what gives you then peace with God. Okay, now, what we're talking about with these shoes is not peace with God. What we're talking about with these shoes is the peace of God. And Jesus says, peace I give you, not as the world gives, give I unto you. I give you peace that passes all understanding, that will garrison your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. That's the kind of peace we're talking about now. This is not the peace with God. This is the peace of God. And when Krista first came in here and she still was in that mindset that God was mad at her, when the revelation came into her that he's not mad at her, she embraced something she already had, which was peace with God. She didn't realize she had peace with God. In other words, she didn't realize he had peace with her. When you realize God has peace with you, you know he's not mad at you. That isn't even part of the equation. There is no such thing as God's mad at you. The love of God does not get mad at you. I'm not saying the love of God doesn't correct you. But see, we, in our humanness, equate anger with correction. But that is not God. That's humanity. It's the way we do it. We discipline because we're mad at another. We correct because most of the time we correct another because we're either inconvenienced by them, frustrated by them, angered at them, right? Most of the time, our reason for correcting or thinking we can correct somebody else is self. Okay? God does not correct us because he's a narcissistic father who has to have it his way. He does have to have it his way. He is God. There is a difference between humanity thinking they have to have it their way and being narcissistic because of it. Because you're always wrong and they're always right, and right? That's that whole scenario. That isn't God. He's not looking for a reason to put you down so he can feel better. He does not have to crush you in your humanity so that he feels good about himself. That right there is worth the price of admission. Just understanding that God doesn't have to pull your strings like the puppet master so that you do everything right so that he feels good about the performance. That is not him at all. If that's who you think he is, you do not have a revelation of your Father. It's not what he's like at all. However, he is a good Father. And he wants to grow you up to look just like him. He wants to give you the family business. You know, just like trying to give kids the family business or something that you've saved for them or whatever. You know, sometimes we don't want the family business. Well, now, I don't want to grow up and be like you. I want to grow up and be like Joe's parents, right? I don't want the family business. Well, then you don't understand what Father's business is. Because when you do, you want to be about your Father's business. When did Jesus get that? At 12. He looked at his earthly parents who were all panicked out because they didn't know where Jesus was. And he looked at them and he said, "Didn't you know I'd be about my Father's business?" Think about that phrase for a minute. You know, Joseph's going, "Were you out here selling furniture for me, dude?" Right? Joseph was a carpenter. "Didn't you know I'd be about my Father's business?" You're sitting in the temple reading the scroll with a bunch of the religious people. How is that being about your Father's business? I'm a carpenter. I wonder what went through Mary and Joseph's mind when he said, "Didn't you know?" And I don't think he said it cocky. I can't picture Jesus looking at his parents going, "Didn't you know I'd be about my Father's business?" Like teenagers talk. Can you picture that? No, I can't. After all, it says that the scribes and the Pharisees and everybody in the temple looked at him and said, "Whoa, where does this kid get this wisdom from?" Whoa. So he had to have spoken in a manner, because they were used to 12-year-olds reading in the temple. That wasn't a oddity. We think, whoa, 12-year-old is sitting down with all. That wasn't the oddity to it. Because at 12, you were bar mitzvahed. You were in a place where you became a man in the sight of the religious community. So Jesus doing that at 12, that wouldn't have been that surprising. What was surprising was, wait a minute, this kid speaks as one with authority. The rest of the kids came in there and were hoping they could read and sing the Torah correctly so that they could get their manhood certificate, right, to be bar mitzvahed. But Jesus didn't go in like that. When he spoke the word, it had authority. Why? He was the word. He spoke from the I am that he was. And everybody heard what he had to say and went, okay, this is not your typical 12-year-old kid. They didn't know what, but they knew there was authority on what he said that they didn't see anywhere else. So there's no way that kid smarted off to his mom and dad. When he said, didn't you know I'd be about my Father's business? He was reflecting the I am. He was reflecting who he was. He was identifying. He was revealing the identity of who he knew his Father was. That's one of the first places you see him really in a veiled form declaring his sonship. It's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that before. Oh. So putting on, we have to understand that this word shod is this idea of deliberately, it's a deliberate act to shod your feet. Nobody puts those shoes on you. In fact, every piece we've talked about so far, nobody puts on you. You put it on. So each aspect of who God is that we're talking about, Christ, every piece of this armor is him, but every piece of this is your deliberate act to put on. He doesn't do this to you. This didn't happen because you said, Jesus, I make you Lord of my life. That's the peace with God part. That's where you embraced that. But the rest of this is because you choose to be in partnership with your armor. I mean, you might not think about that, but even what I said about these greaves being made for each soldier, I mean, think about that. If I stood 3 people up here, when Landon comes back, I'll do this. I'll get you to come up here and Landon to come up here, and I want to show you something about this, and I'll go back into that, but that'll be worth doing. But so understanding that this is a deliberate act, it's a choice. It's you taking ownership of what you need to walk correctly. Landon, come up here, please. Chase, come up here. I just want to show you guys this. So I'm saying this is an intentional, deliberate act. Think about the fact. Look at these legs compared to these legs, and think about what a piece of armor to go around those would be compared to those. If we made armor for Landon, if we made greaves for Landon, and we tried to put them on Chase, what would happen? You probably trip. I don't even know if you could stand in them without impaling yourself. I don't know that. Yeah, right? What if we made them for him and decided you should wear them? How's that going to work? It's not. It's not going to. So it feels silly, and here but I wanted you to see, because we don't think about this. Thanks, guys. The armor was made specifically for each soldier. Okay, we're talking about peace. Jesus is peace for each one of us. He is made specifically for your walk. And your walk. And your walk. And yours and yours and you guys. He's tailored to fit your walk. So that you can have peace in your walk. You can't take somebody else's and think it's going to fit. You've got to have it made for you. And that is your deliberate act. You've got to get to him and say, Father, show me peace in my walk. Show me how to step in to that which you have made for me so that I can walk this life peacefully, so that I can walk in peaceful authority. See, there's authority that wants to scream and yell, and then there's peaceful authority. And I'll go back to, when Landon came up here a couple of times ago, and we were talking about this whole concept, beginning to talk about this whole concept, and I made some comment about how, am I going to, little me versus great big Landon, and am I going to physically duke it out with him? Chances are that's probably not going to go well for one of us. I'll let you guys try to figure out which one. But but that was the thing. When he went and sat back down, he and Trayton were having a conversation, and Landon said to him, I was a little bit scared. I was kind of scared up there. Because, but we were talking about it later, I walk in authority. He could feel the authority because I'm in my office right now. When I'm up here teaching, the anointing is on me to do what I do. And he hadn't, I don't know that you've been that close to me when I'm in this office. You could feel it. So you could feel the authority of God on me in a way that made humanity kind of go, I don't think I care how big I am. That's kind of scary. And so I just thought that's just such a neat, because it's not me, and I'm not scary anyway. I'm not a scary person. My kids would probably beg to differ, but I'm just, and so would Abby. But I do believe that if you do feel that off me, it is because of the authority I walk in. It's not because I don't think anybody who knows me would ever think I would be mean to them. That's just not part of who I am. But if something has to be said or done in God, He's got me, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to say what He's saying. I'm going to do what He tells me to do. Probably the craziest thing I've ever done is I was in a car with somebody, and they were talking about a stomach ailment, and I kept hearing the Lord say, punch her with fire. And I'm like, what? And I got this picture of me going, whah, and just punching her in the gut and going, fire. And I'm like, golly, I don't know that I want to do that. And I don't recommend you just doing that because it sounds like fun or because I want, let's beat somebody up. That's not the point. But I kept feeling it. And I'm like, dang, I'm in trouble if I don't do this, aren't I? You got that feeling. And so we were in a parking lot. We were not driving down the road. But I kept feeling it, and finally I reached over and I went, bam, fire of God. And she went, oh. I'm really good now. Like she was healed. It's like, okay, that's just plain weird, God. But so it's you do what He tells you to do, but you make sure that He's told you to do it. Because I wouldn't want that on me, But she was somebody who she didn't go, what did you just do to me? She went, oh man, God just touched me. God whacks you over the head with a 2x4 and we sing, He touched me, right? So, having on what He's prepared for you, even that story I just told, He had that prepared for me to operate in at that moment. I don't walk around and do that. I've never done it any other time than that. Aren't you all glad? Watch out next week at altar call. No, I'm just kidding. But do you see what I'm saying? We laugh at that, but are we willing to wear what He's... Are we willing to say, what's my path of peace? At that moment for me, my path of peace was to obey him and do that, which did not seem very peaceful. But it produced his results because I was walking out his path. Does this make sense? I mean, this is going to be peace is going to be a several part thing here because there's a lot to think about here. So, ownership. So, in this, we're just on the first word, shod, still. Because in the concept of being shod, so not just slipped on, but really bound on, we've had to it has to be a deliberate act. It has to be a choice. You don't, it's not like these. I don't really have to think much about it. I am still choosing to put it on, aren't I? But I'm not, there's not much effort involved. It's like flip-flops, no effort. Slippers, no effort. Putting on the shoes of peace, gonna be some effort. You choose, you put them on, you bind them on. It's a deliberate act, and they need to be owned by you. They need to be yours specifically, like we just showed you the difference between what Landon's would look like and what Chase's would look like. And it has to be intentional. What's the difference between intentional and a choice? You can choose something and never actually do it, right? I choose Jesus, but I never put him on. I choose to follow Jesus, but I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm not going to ask him what he wants me to do. Okay, so he made a choice, but where's the intentionality behind it? See, if I make a choice to follow him, then I have to also intentionally get up and follow him. Right? Isn't that what, think about the man who was at the pool of Bethesda, and you remember they came along and the disciples said, look here, and he looked and he said, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have I give to you. In the name of Jesus, rise up and walk. What did he have to do? He chose to believe them, but he also intentionally got up and walked. He could have said, yeah, I believe you guys. Thanks. Appreciate that. And he could have laid right there. Do you think he would have ever got up and walked? Well, you see what I'm saying? You have to put action behind your choice. I can go in an ice cream store. Baskin Robbins has, 37 flavors or something? That's a bad thing. There's too many choices. Let's go to the place that only has vanilla and chocolate. And then they mess that up because you can have twist. Oh no, now I have 3 choices when I thought I just had 2. Okay, so I can choose one or the other. And I can walk out of the store with my twist, because I really am not good at choices. And I can walk down the street, and I can soon have my twist dripping down the end of my arm if I don't intentionally stay after that thing so it doesn't drip, right? So even though I made a choice and I received from my choice, I may not have internalized what I chose because I didn't intentionally take it in. Does this make sense? Can you see how this is true with the things of God as well? Especially this armor thing? Okay. So the basic breakdown of that then is, as a disciple of Christ, you must personally equip yourself for the path he has marked out for you. You're not on somebody else's path, and you can't wear somebody else's armor to do it. Remember the story of David and Saul? David, what did Saul want? Oh, here you go. Here's my armor. And David was like, yeah, I better go leave that thing in the tent. Yeah, chasing Landon. That was kind of the David and Saul right there, right? You got here, little David. Here, use my armor. Let's see how this works. I mean, think about that. Now you really can picture what that must have looked like to David when David's going, "Ooh, don't think I want to wear those greaves. Those would be grief greaves. Those are not a good thing." Okay. But I mean, think about the breastplate. I mean, Saul's this great big dude, and here's David going, can't see around my own righteousness. Well, I can't see around Saul's righteousness, right? And what about the belt? How many times do I wrap Saul's truth around me to hold up Saul's armor on me when I'm way too little to wear all of that stuff? That's the same picture here, only now we're talking about putting on Christ as your armor because he will fit you perfectly. He will be molded to you. Remember, Scripture says in Jeremiah 29:11, he knows the plans he has for you, plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and an expected end. God has a plan for you. He knows the path you're on, and he wants to be your complete covering to walk that path. And if you understand that, then it's almost a no-brainer on the shoes, because the shoes are peace. And when you really grasp he's got you, how can you be in anything but peace? See, it no longer matters what you're walking through, because if you're walking through the thorns and thistles of life, even if they're the thorns and thistles in your own garden, because remember, this is soul wear, this armor covers your soul, then you're able to push through the thorns and thistles in your own garden. Because with that clothing your soul, the thorns and thistles now become external to your spirit. And you're able to operate, you're able to teach your soul to operate according to the Spirit, so that walking through thorns and thistles does not take you out of peace. It's just part of developing your land. See, if you don't have this, then you're stressed out about trying to please God, because you're all tangled up in the thorns and thistles of life. And you're definitely sure that he's hurting over how bad you're hurting, because you're tangled up in thorns and thistles. Think about how it says that Jesus will go after that sheep that's all caught up in the thorns and thistles. Wow, how cool is that? That fits right here as well. He's going to pull you out of all of that. He's going to dust you off, clean you off. So why be out of peace because you see that there's some thorns and thistles that need to be cleaned out? So what? Partner with him. Stay in peace, and he'll get you through the thorns and thistles. We can do that with the rocks. I mean, think about it. I don't think stepping on rocks is nearly as bad as stepping on Legos, okay? I had one child who was an absolute Lego fanatic. I mean, he had every Lego, and still probably does. And, I've watched my daughter-in-law makes Lego flowers. And, it's like, yeah, but you know what? If Johnny bumps into Anna's Lego flowers in the night, and those things scatter over the floor, then even if it was a rose that didn't really have thorns, it's going to feel like it when you step on it when it's dark, okay? It's just the way Legos work. I wonder how much peace there will be in the Duval household when Johnny is walking through the shadow of the Legos. Shadow of the Valley of Legos, But but this is so these shoes on your feet can keep you from stepping on the Legos in your life, hurting yourself when you step on the Legos in your life. We all have rocks or Legos on the floor of our life that we've got to have His peace to walk over. Especially because many times when we find out about the rocks in our life, in ourself, it's in the dark. We're walking through a dark place in our life, and we're stepping down on some things and going, ow, ooh, ow, I'm not very peaceful about this walk. Well, it's because we don't have Him on our way so that we can go, dang, that felt a lot like a Lego under there. Yep, there's another one. Okay, what do I do with these? Because, Legos are to build things. Of course, in that day, rocks were to build things. The best thing you can do with the rocks in the garden, the rocks in your garden, those things that are stuck in your thinking, that are keeping your thinking from being good soil, why don't you dig them up and make a wall that keeps the enemy out? Instead of allowing a thought pattern to be ingrained and be this rock in the middle of your field and you can't plant anything there and you're tripping over it at night, why don't in the daylight, the light of God, why don't you let Him help you dig that thing up? And if there's a whole bunch of them in different spots, let Him help you build a wall. Let Him help you do something productive with your thought rocks, with those things that have been embedded in you from traumas and things like that. Why don't you let the peace of God help you to step on those things and find them and then build from them? Wow. That's good, Holy Ghost. The disciple of Christ must personally equip themselves for the path He marks out. So only He knows the plan He has for you. Only He knows what's there and how to walk through it. You choose to put on His peace for your path. That's partnership. It's not you get His peace for your path because you're going to do your own thing. Come on, peace of God. Come on. Go. Okay. I need you out there in front of me. Go clear my path for me. That's not this. This is you walking in it, in Him, so you can walk with Him through the path He has for you, not the path you have for you. Dear God, let's do His path He has for you. I guarantee you that no matter what lumpy, bumpy, thorn, thistle, whatever is along that path, if it's His path for you, He's got a reason for all of that. If it's your path for you, it's because, good luck. He'll still help you. It's not like He's not going to help you, but he's always helping you to try to get you to be on the path He has for you. I know, He says. He doesn't say, oh, I know you know the path I have for you, so you go do it. He says, I know the plan I have for you. Why don't you walk with me, and I'll even give you the right shoes to wear so that you can walk through it even if it is a little bumpy, rocky, and snarly along the way. How cool is that? Functional footwear for faithful following. Wow, there's a reason for that title. It wasn't just the F's. And here's the last part of this that I got through point one, right? One word. Does that surprise anybody? And here's the other part of it. Spiritual traction Does anybody ever feel like their spiritual life is kind of a slippery mess? You know? Slip, sliding away. Oh, wait a minute, no. Repentance. Slip, sliding away. Oh, no, repentance, right? Like, well, here you go. Spiritual traction. Remember? There's cleats on them there shoes. If you're wearing his functional footwear, it will keep you from sliding or falling. Doesn't it say that the righteous fall 7 times, but they get up running? The fall isn't the problem. It's the, did you get up running? So if we're in his peace, and he knows the plan he has for us, and we happen to trip over, on 2 feet, because that's usually what we're really tripping over is ourselves. It's okay, because all we have to do is get his feet back on the ground and get back on our path, and we've got traction again. Don't think that, I used to say, like with skating or skiing or any of those slippery sports, I needed at least 2 pairs. Like I needed 2 pairs of skis. I needed one for my feet and one for my backside, because I was probably going to spend more time on that pair, which pair got worn out faster, right? Same way with skates, It's like, I don't do slippery sports. You know what I do? I do snowshoeing. And I still sometimes think it would be nice to have a second pair. I have fallen down a tree well before. I can tell you that is scary. Yeah, tree well. You're from Wyoming? And you don't know what a tree well is? Good for you. So when you're in the woods and you're skiing or snowshoeing or whatever in the winter, obviously, although around here it could be spring or fall, but when you're up there and there's a lot of snow and the wind has blown, a lot of times you can't really tell how tall the trees are that you're near. And so you can be walking along, and that drifting up across a tree that it was a tall tree now looks like, look, a little short tree. Well, if you get close enough to where the indentation is, you can fall right down the tree way deep, and you can find out that, we've got 16-foot snowpack, and you are now 15 feet down. How do you get out? So, yeah, but that's the kind of thing, like, talk about slippery slope, you need to know where the spiritual pitfalls are, where the spiritual tree wells are, you've got to stay with him. He knows the path. Avoid that one. Go this way, right? Because there may be more to the equation, and there may be things you don't know, just like Lori was saying, I don't know what a tree well is. So could there be things in your life that are spiritual pitfalls like that you don't know about yet? But I can tell you what, when you're down the well, like poor Joseph was, you're hoping anybody, even the trader, comes along to trade you out of that well. And doesn't the Word of God say he takes us from the miry pit and sets us on a solid rock? Well, guess what? Once again, who's the solid rock? Jesus. Sometimes I think that miry pit is just simply my soul. I think I fall down in my own personal tree well sometimes. And I still need him to come along and pull me up out of there. So having spiritual traction in every temptation or trial, understanding that walking in his peace will give you firm footing in gospel truth that will prevent you from spiritual slippage. Huge, huge. So that is all just based on the word shod. This is just, how do you put them on? I gave you a little bit of what they are, but we haven't even gone into the peace part of it, really. Peace is kind of still hanging out there. What is peace? We'll find out. Maybe next week. Hard, maybe. Yeah. We'll get through this in 2 or 3 weeks. Hard, maybe. Yeah, exactly. But do you see this? Do you see once again? I mean, we did 3 weeks on truth. We only did 2 weeks on righteousness. I don't know if that was, we'll see. but I see at least 2. Probably there's at least 3 weeks here on peace. Because if I had to pick something right now that I do not see people walk in, it would be peace. Because they want peace as the world gives, only the world isn't giving any. The world is in its own form of utter chaos. But what you have to remember is walking in God's peace has nothing to do with the chaos. Peace is not what you have because there's an absence of war. Peace is what you have in the midst of the war because you're clothed in Him.